Sometimes, the most extraordinary stories come from the most unexpected places. Tonight, we bring you a tale of resilience, courage, and transformation, a story that proves no matter where you start in life, the journey ahead is yours to define. Meet Richard Blackwell, a powerful businessman, and Clara Mitchell, a humble housekeeper whose quiet strength turned the tables in a way no one could have imagined. What happens when arrogance meets determination? Stay tuned to find out. If you love stories that inspire, challenge, and surprise you, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Join our growing community and be the first to hear incredible tales like this one, delivered straight to you. Absolutely free. Thank you for supporting our channel. And let's dive into tonight's captivating story. Sometimes, life surprises us in the most unexpected ways. In a tale of transformation and justice, we meet a man who thought he had control over everything, and a woman who proved that true strength lies within. This story takes us from the grandeur of a mansion to the corporate boardrooms of New York, showing how resilience and character can defy even the harshest odds. Let us dive into the story of Richard Blackwell, a wealthy widower and businessman, and Clara Mitchell, his loyal housekeeper, who turned an ordinary business dinner into an unforgettable turning point. Richard Blackwell was a name synonymous with power in Manhattan, a prominent CEO of Blackwell Industries. He had built an empire in finance and technology. But behind the glittering exterior lay a man hardened by loss, arrogance, and a disdain for those he deemed beneath him. Widowed for over a decade, Richard had grown increasingly detached, treating those around him as tools for his convenience. Clara Mitchell had worked for Richard for nearly 5 years. Hired as a housekeeper, she was diligent and discreet, often fading into the background of Richard's extravagant lifestyle. But Clara was far more than she appeared. A single mother with a sharp mind and a quiet strength. She had ambitions that far exceeded her role at Blackwell Manor. One brisk autumn morning, Clara was busy polishing the glass shelves in Richard's home office when he summoned her with a sharp call. "Clara," he said curtly, without looking up from his laptop. "Cancel your plans tonight. You're coming with me to a business dinner." Clara stopped mid-motion, surprised. "A business dinner, sir?" "Yes," he said dismissively. "It's an important event with potential investors. I need someone by my side who won't draw too much attention. Just show up, keep quiet, and don't embarrass me." Clara felt the sting of his words but nodded. She had little choice in the matter. For Richard, this wasn't a request, it was an order. That evening, Clara arrived at an upscale restaurant in Midtown Manhattan wearing a simple but elegant black dress. The transformation was striking. For the first time, Clara looked more like a guest than a servant. Richard greeted her at the entrance with a glance that betrayed impatience rather than appreciation. "Let's get this over with," he muttered, leading her inside. The restaurant was buzzing with power and prestige. At the center of it all was a long table occupied by Richard's potential investors, 5 sharply dressed individuals, each radiating wealth and influence. Clara could feel their eyes on her as they assessed her with polite yet skeptical glances. "This is Clara," Richard introduced her vaguely, not even offering her last name. "She's accompanying me tonight." The investors smiled politely, though Clara caught the subtle undertones of judgment. She sat quietly as the conversation shifted to financial projections, mergers, and market strategies, topics she had no reason to know but listened to intently. It wasn't long before one of the investors, Charles Whitman, turned his attention to Clara, a tall man with a commanding presence. Charles leaned in with a thin smile. "So, Clara," he said, his tone teetering between curiosity and condescension, How do you find yourself in the midst of all this high-stakes business talk? Clara hesitated for a moment. She could have offered a safe, non-committal response, but something inside her urged her to speak. "Well, Mr. Whitman," she began, her voice steady, "it's fascinating to see how deals are made and futures are shaped. But I believe there's more to business than just numbers. People drive these deals, and understanding their motives and values is just as important as the profits they seek." The table went silent. Richard froze, visibly irritated, while the investors exchanged intrigued glances. Clara's unexpected insight had struck a chord. Charles chuckled. "That's quite an observation, Clara. You don't usually hear that perspective in rooms like this." Richard shot Clara a sharp glance. But she didn't falter. She remained poised, knowing she had spoken her truth. However, the tension between her and Richard was palpable. And as the night continued, it became clear that this dinner would not go as he had planned. The dinner at the luxurious Midtown restaurant was supposed to be a calculated move for Richard Blackwell. He had carefully orchestrated every detail, from the wine selection to the projected numbers in his presentation. But the one element he hadn't accounted for was Clara Mitchell, his housekeeper, who was steadily becoming the unintended center of attention. As the meal progressed, Clara's presence continued to draw subtle but growing interest. While she remained largely silent, her poised demeanor and sharp observations during brief exchanges were impossible to ignore. The investors, particularly Charles Whitman, began steering the conversation toward broader topics, probing Clara's thoughts in ways that Richard found increasingly uncomfortable. The tension reached a boiling point when the topic shifted to corporate social responsibility. Charles leaned back in his chair, swirling his glass of wine as he posed a direct question to Richard. "Tell me, Richard," Charles began, his tone laced with curiosity, "does Blackwell Industries have any ongoing social initiatives? You know, programs to give back to the community?" Richard hesitated, visibly caught off guard. He had always dismissed such endeavors as distractions from profit-making, and his discomfort was evident. Before he could formulate a dismissive response, Clara, sitting quietly beside him, chose that moment to interject. "I think programs like that are essential," Clara said, her voice calm but clear. "Corporations hold immense power, and with that comes a responsibility. Giving back isn't just ethical, it's good for business. Communities thrive when companies invest in them, and that creates a ripple effect of loyalty, growth, and success." All eyes turned to Clara. For a moment, even the hum of the bustling restaurant seemed to fade. Charles raised an eyebrow, clearly impressed. Another investor, Margaret Hensley, a sharp and analytical woman, nodded thoughtfully. "You make an excellent point, Clara," Margaret said. "It's rare to hear someone articulate it so plainly and persuasively." Richard's patience snapped. His hand gripped his wineglass tightly as he cut in, his tone cold. "Clara, you're here to observe, not to lecture us on business ethics." The sharpness of his words hung in the air like a slap. Clara glanced at him, her expression unreadable, but instead of retreating, she met his glare with quiet confidence. "With all due respect, Mr. Blackwell," she said, "you brought me here. If my presence is so disruptive, perhaps you should ask yourself why." The investors exchanged glances, sensing the underlying tension. Charles leaned forward, an amused smirk on his face. "I think Clara's insights are refreshing, Richard. Sometimes it takes an outsider to remind us of the bigger picture." Richard forced a strained smile. But the damage was done. Clara had not only defied his expectations but had also drawn the attention and respect of the very people he sought to impress. As the dinner wound down, Richard's frustration boiled over. He avoided Clara entirely, striding out of the restaurant ahead of her. Clara, however, didn't need his approval. She had held her ground. And for the first time, she felt the stirrings of something she hadn't allowed herself to believe in for years: potential. Back at Blackwell Manor, Richard's fury erupted. The moment Clara stepped through the door, he confronted her in his office. "What in the world were you thinking?" he demanded, his voice cutting. "I told you to stay silent, to be discreet. Instead, you made a fool of me in front of my investors." Clara stood tall, her posture unyielding. "I didn't make a fool of you, Mr. Blackwell. I answered their questions honestly. If that upset you, perhaps it's because you underestimated me." Richard's eyes narrowed, his face darkening. "You were a housekeeper, Clara, nothing more, and after tonight, you're not even that. You're fired." The words hit like a blow, but Clara refused to let him see her falter. She simply nodded, her dignity intact. "Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Blackwell. I'll be gone by morning." The following day, as Clara packed her belongings, her phone buzzed with an unexpected call. It was Charles Whitman. "Clara," his voice came through warmly. "I hope I'm not disturbing you. I wanted to say how impressed I was by you last night. Your insights were sharp, and your composure was remarkable." Clara blinked in surprise. "Thank you, Mr. Whitman. Call me Charles," he replied. "I believe someone like you has potential far beyond Blackwell Manor. If you're interested, I have a position on my team. It's not glamorous, but it's a start, and a chance to grow." For a moment, Clara couldn't speak. The offer was more than she had ever dreamed. With a mix of gratitude and determination, she accepted. Over the next few months, Clara's life transformed. Working alongside Charles, she proved herself time and again, quickly earning the respect of her colleagues. Her sharp mind and tireless work ethic propelled her into a leadership role, where she thrived. Meanwhile, Richard's fortunes began to crumble. His company, once a titan of the industry, faltered under his rigid leadership and lack of vision. The investors he had hoped to impress gradually distanced themselves, and Blackwell Industries faced a crisis it couldn't escape. Months later, Clara found herself in a boardroom at a high-stakes corporate merger meeting. She had come a long way from Blackwell Manor, but she never expected to see Richard Blackwell again, until he walked through the door. When Richard's eyes landed on Clara, sitting confidently at the table as a key player in the opposing company, his face paled. He faltered, his arrogance visibly shaken. Clara, however, remained calm, her gaze steady. "Hello, Mr. Blackwell," she said simply. Richard struggled to mask his disbelief, but the room was already abuzz with murmurs. For the first time, he was forced to see Clara not as a housekeeper but as an equal, someone who had risen above his dismissal and proved her worth. The tables had turned, and Clara Mitchell was no longer in the shadows. The tension in the boardroom was palpable. Richard Blackwell stood at the door, frozen in shock as he faced the undeniable reality: Clara Mitchell. The woman he had dismissed as unworthy, now held a seat at the table of power. Her presence was a silent but powerful declaration of how far she had come, and how far he had fallen. Richard's discomfort didn't go unnoticed. The other executives in the room exchanged knowing glances, some suppressing smiles at the evident shift in dynamics. Clara, however, remained composed. Her confidence wasn't born from spite but from the knowledge that she had earned her place. "Let's get started," Charles Whitman, the meeting chair, announced, breaking the silence. He glanced at Clara with a faint smile. a silent acknowledgement of her journey. Richard reluctantly took his seat across from her, his demeanor rigid, his mind racing. The meeting commenced with Charles outlining the terms of the proposed merger. Blackwell Industries, weakened by financial missteps and the loss of investor confidence, was on the brink of collapse. The offer from Whitman's firm was not just a lifeline, it was a takeover in all but name. As part of this agreement, Charles said, his tone measured, "We intend to restructure Blackwell Industries to align with modern ethical standards and corporate social responsibility. Clara will lead these efforts, given her exemplary work in these areas." Richard's jaw tightened. Clara, leading his company, the very thought was an affront to his pride. But as the details of the proposal unfolded, it became clear that his objections would carry no weight. He had no leverage, no allies. His empire was slipping from his grasp. After the meeting adjourned, Richard cornered Clara in the hallway, his expression a mix of anger and desperation. "This is absurd," he hissed. "You think you can come in here, into my company, and act as if you belong? You're nothing more than a housekeeper playing dress-up." Clara turned to face him, her expression calm but resolute. "You're wrong, Richard. I was a housekeeper, yes, but that was never all I was. You refused to see past my role, and now you're paying the price for your arrogance." Richard scoffed, though his bravado was beginning to crack. "This is revenge, isn't it? You've been waiting for this moment." Clara's eyes softened, and she shook her head. "No, Richard, this isn't about revenge. It's about proving to myself, and to others, that worth isn't defined by where you start, but by what you're willing to fight for." Her words stung, not because they were cruel but because they were true. For the first time, Richard saw her not as an adversary but as a reminder of his own failures. Days later, Clara found herself reviewing proposals for Blackwell Industries restructuring. It was a daunting task, but one she approached with the same determination that had carried her this far. Her goal wasn't to dismantle the company but to transform it into something better, something that valued both profit and purpose. Unexpectedly, Charles entered her office with a thoughtful expression. "I've been thinking about Richard," he said, taking a seat. "He's arrogant and short-sighted. Yes, but he knows the company inside and out. Perhaps there's still a place for him, if he's willing to change." Clara considered this. Despite everything, she believed in second chances. "Let's give him the opportunity," she agreed, "but it's up to him to prove he can adapt." The decision was relayed to Richard, who initially balked at the idea of working under Clara's leadership. But with no alternatives, he reluctantly accepted. Clara was firm but fair, assigning him tasks that required humility and collaboration. Over time, Richard began to show signs of growth, though his journey was far from complete. Months later, at a high-profile industry summit, Clara and Richard found themselves on the same stage, presenting Blackwell Industries' transformation. The room was packed with executives, investors, and media, all eager to see the results of the once struggling company's bold new direction. Clara spoke first, outlining the company's new initiatives, which emphasized ethical practices, employee welfare, and community engagement. Her passion and clarity captivated the audience, drawing a standing ovation. When it was Richard's turn, he hesitated before stepping up to the podium. The man who once thrived on arrogance now stood humbled. "For years," he began, "I believed success was about dominance, winning at all costs. But I was wrong. True success is about building something that lasts. Something that benefits not just a few but many. And for that lesson, I owe Clara Mitchell my gratitude." The applause that followed was thunderous. For Clara, it wasn't a moment of triumph over Richard, but a testament to the power of change and the value of perseverance. As the summit concluded, Clara stood by the window, watching the city lights. Richard approached her, his expression unreadable. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for giving me a chance to redeem myself." Clara smiled faintly. "Everyone deserves a second chance, Richard. It's what you do with it that matters." Their journey, though fraught with conflict, had brought him to a place of mutual respect. For Clara, it was the beginning of a new era, not just for Blackwell Industries but for herself. She had defied the odds, reclaimed her voice, and proved that true power comes not from titles but from integrity and determination. And as the city buzzed with the news of Blackwell Industries' resurgence, Clara knew that her story was far from over. It was just the beginning of something extraordinary. Clara Mitchell's journey from housekeeper to a respected leader in the corporate world is a testament to the power of resilience, integrity, and the courage to stand up for oneself. Her story reminds us that success isn't defined by where we start, but by the strength and determination we bring to every challenge. Clara didn't just rise above her circumstances, she transformed them, proving that true leadership is about character, vision, and the willingness to uplift others. Richard Blackwell, too, serves as a reminder that no one is immune to change. His downfall and eventual redemption highlight the importance of humility, self-awareness, and the courage to learn from one's mistakes. In a world often driven by profit and competition, their story shows us that empathy, ethical leadership, and valuing people are what truly create lasting success. Life lessons for today. For all of us, this story holds valuable lessons. Never underestimate anyone. Everyone has untapped potential. And often, the people we overlook are those who can make the greatest impact. Value integrity over arrogance, in both life and business. Treating others with respect and kindness will always lead to stronger, more meaningful outcomes. Embrace growth and change, whether you're at the top or just starting out. The ability to learn, adapt, and grow is what truly defines success. Stand up for yourself, like Clara. Never let others silence your voice. Your unique perspective is your greatest strength. If you found this story inspiring, we have many more like it to share with you. Hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you'll never miss our latest and most captivating stories. Let us take you on a journey of transformation, inspiration, and life-changing lessons, all completely free. Support our channel by subscribing, and join a community that celebrates stories of perseverance, hope, and humanity. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for the next incredible tale that might just inspire the change you've been looking for.